Welcome to the Rich Relationship Podcast with Gil
and Renee, where amazing things happen. Our goal is to help build, repair, and restore healthy relationships.
Our primary focus is on the marriage relationship. However, the topics are applicable to the relationships that we value most. Remember, we're stronger together.
Let's grow.
You know, mirrors are something that many of us really don't like.
You say mirrors?
Yeah, mirrors. You know, mirrors are something that we just don't like. And I think sometimes it's because we don't have a proper view of ourselves.
Kind of like the reflection that you see.
Yes. And I used to always talk to women. I would say many of our problems begin with the reflection in the mirror. And so what we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about identity, because we're more than what the reflection shows. But sometimes we get caught up in the reflection and we forget about the substance of the core of our identity.
So that's going to be coming up on this episode of the Rich Relationship Podcast with Gil and Renee for episode 81. And the title that you called it was
Getting to Know Yourself.
There you go. Getting to know yourself.
Getting to know you.
So why do you think people actually struggle with their identity?
Well, because I think that we don't understand how you build identity. We don't understand. We just see the result of it. And we don't think about, well, where did it come from? How did our identity become established? And what if it was something as simple as the books you read, the television shows you watched, the people you listen to?
Well, a lot of people believe that that's exactly where it starts.
Well, it is where it starts.
You know, all the things between the people you know and the books you read and the things you watch, and all those things play into your identity, especially when you're just starting out. You're always thinking, who am I? What am I? Or how I identify myself, you know, or trying to form those identities in yourself.
And I think it starts when you're young. You're trying to figure out, I think that's the first big question you ask yourself, who am I and why am I here? And I think it's important that when you ask that question, you ask that question of people who have already established their identity.
Or at least you should.
Yes. Because I think that unfortunately, I remember when Chris and Aaron were both trying to drive the car, they were trying to teach each other how to drive. They're probably like 2 and 3, and they're in the car and they're trying to teach each other. A person who's not accomplished establishing their own identity can't help you establish yours. Mm-hmm. And so it's just important that we really focus on that. And I think that as women, so many times we find our identity in the way we look, especially when we're younger. That's the most important thing about how we look. But then as we get older,
mature,
as we grow, we find our identity in our ability to gain wealth. Because I know for me, I identify myself with my ability to generate income. And that's a very shallow way to identify yourself.
Yeah, but when you don't really think about it from that perspective, you really don't know that you're, you know, looking at it from a very shallow perspective.
And that's why we talk about the mirror, because there's so much more to your identity than the reflection of the mirror. And you just got to take the time to get to know yourself and to get to know, well, what are the things that are really important to me, and what are the sources of my identity? And I think that some of the things about our identity are obvious because God has created us in his image and his likeness. And so some of the things about our identity is not for us to interpret. It's for us to better have an understanding of, and not to try to create our own identity. Because I think that when we make our identity in things that are, if you make your identity the fact that you're a senior, mm-hmm. you know, you identify with being a senior. Well,
sooner or later, you're not going to be a senior anymore.
Exactly. Well, you're going to be a senior, but it's going to be much later in life.
Right.
But I think that we have to make sure that we identify with the things that will last. And so we want to talk this episode about building your identity.
Because before you start or you're currently in a relationship, those are things that you actually have to know about yourself. Because if not, you're going to always be working from a position of catch up. Mm-hmm. Or trying to identify or clarify things, and not only in yourself, but in your spouse or your mate or whoever you're dating at the time, to try to help them.
And I think a part of it, when you hear people say, well, I lost myself, I ended the relationship because I lost myself. Well, is it that you lost yourself or that you never took the time to get to know yourself? So you made that other person who you are. Mm-hmm. And we can't make our children, or we can't make our careers. We can't make our successes or even our illnesses, because we can begin to identify with the things that we experience. And that's not your identity. The things you experience are just a part of your life. They're not the sum total of who you are.
Because the first pitfall I think that a lot of people may go through is not having a clear understanding of their identity. And I like the way you actually put it in the book, the Oneness Code Workbook. You talked about it from the perspective of appetites. And when you have your appetites are the thing that really drives you or really gears you or directs you, you're going to find yourself looking at it from like you just said, from your experiences, your emotions, and more importantly, your desires.
Exactly. And it's funny because I was having a conversation with someone about something. Even the way you spend money is a reflection of how you identify yourself. Because I think about it because, we grew up in the city and purses were like a thing, and it was the one thing that no matter how much I weighed, I could always carry a nice bag. I think that's sometimes why women have shoe things. Because
shoe fetishes.
They have shoe fetishes because it's easier to buy a different pair of shoes no matter what size you are. And so I think about how I identified value of myself with brands and things that I wore.
Right.
And so I had to learn and go through a process of realizing that, especially now in this stage of my life, my relationship with money is different. Because as we've been talking and learning and growing, my view of money is that money can be an employer or an employee. And so when I was talking to this person about buying something, I said, well, is this going to make your money an employer or an employee? What are you talking about? Well, part of it is that when you realize that money and the way we spend it has a lot to do with how we see ourselves. So if I feel like, I don't feel as valuable, but if I buy this brand or if I buy this item, I'm going to feel better about myself. That's an external source of value. So when we put value in ourselves based on what we buy or what we drive or what we look like, we're setting ourselves up for an identity that is very fragile.
Because those are the things that are actually going to really pull you away from who you truly and really are.
Right. Because who you are is not what you have. It's not what you do. It's not what you wear. It's who you are when you're alone by yourself with nothing. And that's the true source of your identity.
Now, while we were getting ready for this show, I wanted to ask you this question because we actually use the workbook. Even look at it and do it. And so if you haven't picked up your copy, we encourage you to get your copy of it because it wasn't something that we just put together just as another product. It was something
intentional.
It is. And it's something that we actually use, even as we talk to these episodes because the information, because the information is something that we really believe in. So let me ask you this, and it's addressed in the book. So if you want to know the source or kind of go along with us on these episodes, pick up the book. So the question is, when it comes to, do you learn?
I don't know what you're going to say. I don't know.
It's something that you're going to have an answer for. It's really easy. Do you learn from your experiences, or are you experience-led person? In other words, I have to go through this experience to learn from it, or do you learn from others who've gone through the experience? And I ask you that question because I know which one I am.
Yeah.
Because I will actually pick up something and learn from, I don't have to go through it to learn it, to adopt it, to assimilate it into my life. So my question to you is, are you an experience-led person or one that learns from experience?
Well, you know me. One of the things about our personalities that are different, this is not one of them. We are both. Go and ask somebody who's done it right versus learning from experience. Because I think that experience is the hardest teacher.
Right.
I think that it's better to have mentors and people who will walk alongside you. And just like the person that called me, should I buy this? I told her, I said, I appreciate you calling me because you know that I don't share your same view of this. So therefore, you knew that whatever I told you may not go along with what you wanted to do, but you reached out. And so to me, I think the key, which is why we're always in classes and we're always in workshops and we're always in seminars, because why not learn from someone who's already did it?
Or did what you're trying to do or aspire to get to, because you can waste a whole lot of time,
being an experienced person,
effort, and energy.
And money. And credibility.
We're going to talk a little bit about the credibility side, but going through those things to learn something when you don't have to.
No. Well, you can, because I think a part of it is that, and you know, we have people in our lives who don't have our same bend as far as learning from the wisdom of other people.
Right.
And as we talk and as we, you know, grow in our relationships, I realize, and I ask questions like, well, why do you think you have to do it? Why do you think that it's going to be different for you? And a part of it is, it's because I think it's not going to be different for me. No.
You are unique.
But your situation is not.
You know, we have these little things, and anyone who listens to the episodes, they know we have the same. We're just going to keep saying the same things over and over and over again, because faith comes by and learning comes by hearing it over and over and over again. And
so I think about when you look at people who don't struggle. And I think that at some point we all struggle with our identity. It's not anything. That doesn't mean that you're broken or something is wrong with you. At no matter what stage in life you are developing your identity, you have to make sure that you're going to the right source. Because again, like I mentioned, the books you read, the people you talk to and listen to, and all of those things shape your identity. So one of the most important ways to develop your identity is something that you're going to think it's like, how could that develop your identity? Because if the books you read, the people you talk to, and the shows you watch shape your identity, the best way to develop your identity in Christ is through prayer. It's the conversation. We always talk about the importance of conversations. So one of the most important ways to build your identity is to spend a lot of time with, listening to, reading about, and talking to, and applying the information that your source shares with you. And for us as believers, that would be prayer.
Right.
And so it's just important that you realize that even if you say, oh, I don't believe in God, everyone has a belief system.
Right.
And your belief system is shaping your identity.
It's the foundation, because even through that, you mentioned earlier about credibility, you know, and I wrote down here that you can actually damage that credibility that you have with someone when you're trying to understand what you're going through or trying to establish your identity. I equated it to, you ever tried to lose weight?
Oh, you know, that's my life struggle.
Now I use that because when you think about it, if your credibility has been eroded or compromised, let's put it that way.
Exactly.
It's almost like trying to lose weight. It is so easy to gain 1 pound.
It is.
All you got to do is eat your favorite thing.
That's right.
But how much effort and energy is it going to take to lose that same 1 pound? It's going to, and that's exactly what your credibility is like, is when you lose it, it's so easily. You got to work twice as hard. You do. And put forth twice as much effort to be able to get it back to the place where you were before you can actually move forward to where that trust in that thing is back to where it was.
And I love that you say that, because I think that there's a difference between image and credibility. Just because someone has an image, you can't judge the whole person based on their image, because your image might not be who you really, especially because we live in such a social media driven society. You have to look at the results of this person's image. You have to make sure that the core of who they are matches the image that they are, because sometimes it's just a mirage.
Or it's just the image that they want. There's a reason why celebrities have image consultants, because they have a certain message and a certain presentation that they want to present to the rest of the world that may not be 100% accurate, which is almost one of those things is kind of what we're talking about right now when it comes to their identity. So you don't know who you're really getting when you see something on television or on the radio or anything like that. You don't know what they truly, truly are or how they truly are based on one snapshot in time. And I think we were talking about this afternoon about people confuse popularity, infamy, and being famous or being credible or being that person that that has credibility. Just because you're popular doesn't mean you're credible. It just means you're popular for the moment.
Exactly. And one of the things I talked about today, you can be popular and not be profitable. And that's not just financially profitable. You could not be profitable with building what you're trying to build. You want to make sure that every part of your life reflects the same image and the same message. And that's a part of building your identity. Is it goes what we talked about before about your core values, you know, and your core values go back to what's your belief system. And so when we talk to couples and we really work on relationships, you know, we've said it before and we say it in the book, there are no such thing as marriage problems. They're individual problems that you bring into your marriage. So rich relationships is not just for married people. It's for single people. It's for divorced people, people who are engaged, and people who are married and who are struggling, because a lot of times you don't realize if you suck at being single, you're going to suck at being married.
Wow. That's a good point to just kind of take a quick pause on. Did you get, I know you got a little heavy, so we're going to lighten it up right now just for a quick minute, because first off, we always like to say thank you. You know, we just came back from our kind of like midsummer or mid-spring hiatus.
First real vacation, 7 days.
I know we spent 7 days. And you worked hard last night on the video, so you post that out.
It's up.
So if you want to check out the video, you can go to our website or just check out on YouTube. The Rich Relationship Us. It's just we take you on a little trip with us, just so you can see what we actually did. It was a good 7 days, just time to relax and rest and all those things. But we've been getting feedback from all the listeners, and we just thank you. Thank you. You know, we've been doing this a little while now. We just say thank you because we don't take it for granted.
We're so grateful.
I haven't said it in a while. We thank you for sticking us in your ears and just hanging out with us for this brief moment in time that we can just kind of invest in you. You know, share some things with you to give you something to think about. But we just want to say thank you.
And, you know, I got feedback from Jackie. She said that we are not a podcast to listen to if you're trying to go to sleep. No, y'all. We don't want y'all to go to sleep when y'all listen to us. We're trying to get you cheered up and excited and motivated to do something different. So if you're looking for an episode or a podcast to listen to go to sleep, we are not that podcast.
Get you some sleep music or something like that. That's a good thing to do.
But we're thankful. We're grateful. We want to just thank all of you guys for listening. Thank you guys for sharing. And we want to invite you all to the Q&A session on Zoom on March the 22nd at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, which Eastern Time, that would be 8 o'clock. Join us for an hour of Q&A. You guys can ask us questions about the book. And we just want to make ourselves available for the people who've made the investment in purchasing Rich Relationships, the Oneness Code workbook, to kind of have a place where we can kind of rally around it and ask some quiet questions and get some answers and just connect together.
Cool.
Gil and Renee Beaver's over 30-year relationship is the genesis for the Rich Relationship Podcast, which is designed to empower individuals with the tools, principles, and the community needed to unpack ourselves, our past, and our preconceived notions associated with relationships.
Let's get empty and grow together so that our lives will be filled with love and healthy, rich relationships. Now let's go into our show.
So we're actually talking about identity on this episode of the Rich Relationship Podcast with Gil and Renee, episode 81. And you made a pretty heavy statement as we went into that little interlude. But
you know, that's me. I'm heavy.
Yeah. You know, and you mentioned it earlier at the very beginning of the episode, but we kind of want to talk a little bit about establishing. You were talking about establishing
your identity.
And it starts with the core of the identity, which is your relationship with God.
It does. You know, everyone's identity is going to be centered in the source of their
belief system.
And so whatever that is, it's going to dictate your identity. And one of the things that it talks about in the book, it talks about how Satan didn't attack Eve's looks or her appearance. He attacked her identity.
Okay.
That's what he went after when he told her
who she was.
Who you are. He was trying to tell her who she was.
Or what she wanted. Yeah.
And so that same trick is still out there. People being told who they are by someone other than the person who created you.
Because we said that you're when you think about it, when you're starting out in life, the first person that you really develop that real first relationship with, most of the people obviously is their parents.
Right.
That's where your identity starts. So imagine you're in a relationship where, and God forbid, it happens where you don't have the best parents, so your identity could be kind of, I won't say scarred or ruined or anything like that, but it can be.
Because mine was.
It could be hindered from it coming to full maturity and what you really come to know as you are today, because it's going to shape you and mold you. But it's as you grow, you have to decide, as you grow up, you're going to decide which direction you're going to take it.
I think that when people say that you have when you're talking about your identity and people talk about they talk about basically having low self-esteem.
Right.
I really think that low self-esteem is really a fractured identity versus
That's a good way to
being
put it.
low self-esteem. I think it's really your identity is fractured. It hasn't been developed. There's a lot of holes in it.
Right.
You don't really know. Because again, we didn't have, my mother would always talk to me about God and the Bible. And the thing that she drilled in my head, and you and I were talking about this, honor your mother and your father and your days will be long. That was my belief system. Mm-hmm. That was the only thing I knew about God, was that I had to honor my mother and I had to respect her. It served me well. But again, there's so much more to God than just that one passage. And so I think that when people say, I have low self-esteem, let's just call it what it is. Your identity is fractured.
Right.
And anytime something is fractured, it can always be healed.
Right.
And so we're seeing such an epidemic of that. And it talks about in the book, we're seeing such an epidemic of people not knowing who they are. And so if we could begin to fill those spaces with something that is of substance, because we lost the little Buzz Lightyear and off the back of the RV, and I tried to glue them together with some glue that didn't work. And you're like, pull it and see if it comes apart. I was like, why do you want me to pull it? Because in life,
try to tear it apart to see if it's going to stay together.
To see if it's going to stay together. And so that's what life is like. Life is going to try to tear you apart. So if what you're using to stick together
or to stay
together, to stay whole is not substantial, you're going to be pulled apart.
Right.
And a part of it, and so when we think about, what are we building our identity on? What's the source? What is it that we have made a decision that's going to keep us together?
And I think as you go through life and as you recover from those fractured things, one of the things that we wrote in the book, and you wrote it, and I'll let you kind of elaborate on it. Purpose plus mission equals our identity.
Mm-hmm. Because everyone wants to know, why am I here?
Oh, yeah.
Why am I here? So if you think about why you're here, it helps you to understand that, well, God must have created me for a purpose.
Oh, absolutely.
Because if your identity is based on making money or
a career or a person or a hobby or job or any of those things, it's going to be fleeting and fading really, really quick.
And so and one of the most important things about building identity is to realize it takes time, y'all.
Right.
Nothing good comes easy or fast. It takes time. And so we have to be patient with ourselves and with others as they're building their identity. It takes time. And so we have to be patient and understand that. Because
the very first essence or the first relationship that really, and you mentioned it a little bit in the episode already, comes from Romans 5:8.
That's my favorite.
Go ahead and
Bible
quote it for, and I'll elaborate on why.
It's my favorite. And that was the first Bible verse I really learned. It says, while Jesus loved us while we were yet still in sin.
And he died for us.
And so to me, I'm like, so wait a minute. So you mean to tell me that when I was out there raggedy and turned away from you, you loved me?
Right.
That is the foundation of my identity. And everybody who knows me knows that girl always asking why, and she always talking about identity, because it's so essential to you being a healthy, well-adjusted human being.
Right.
Because if I know who I am, you being who you are won't bother me. Mm-hmm. And I think, you and I were talking about, and I was just thinking about it this morning because I was up working on the episode, the video, and I was thinking about why we get along so well. And I asked you that. I was like, babe, why do you think we get along so well?
Because I disagree with everything you say.
Yeah, right. That's not true. But I think a part of it is because when you have a real strong sense that I am enough.
Right.
And what I do is when I come into any environment, I add value. That resonates with people.
And you have to elaborate on that, because we even write about that when we talk about the more than enough, or being enough.
The enoughness of God.
Because when you just tell someone that they're enough, they really don't understand, well, what does that really mean because you have to tell them why.
Right.
And we already kind of gave you the answer before, because Romans 5:8.
Yeah.
Because while we were still yet in sin, Jesus died for you. So if he said you were enough right then and there,
yes,
that means any circumstance, any situation, anything you find yourself coming upon or coming through or going through, you are enough.
Exactly. And we always say you are more than enough, because enough is just you. More than enough is because God has partnered himself with you. And when I talk about the enoughness of God, it's that you're enough because you know who you belong to. Mm-hmm. That's the first thing about, it's 3 parts to the enoughness of God. And the first part is you're enough because of who you belong to. You don't need any more stuff because your value is not in things.
Not in jobs, not in careers, not in hobbies, not in possessions that you acquire.
Exactly. And then the last one is you have a healthy sense of your value. So you know when to say enough is enough.
And that means when you have those relationships that are strained,
yes, or
that position that you may have taken at that job is causing you unnecessary stress,
yes,
or you don't have peace in your life, you have to get to the point where you say enough
is enough. And so that's when you see that everywhere, you are more than enough. That's what that means. It's not a cliche. It's the core of our identity. And it's so important that when you realize, because I think that at the root of all of our issues, it really goes back to, do you really like you?
Well, you think about that, though. How long did it take for you to really say, I like myself? For me, I think about that question. And that's not something that you would naturally think about. When did you start really liking yourself? If you are a person who started liking yourself at a very early age and you didn't have, like you mentioned earlier, those fractures in your identity, mm-hmm, and that manifests like as self-esteem,
right?
Bless you. But sometimes there are a lot of people out there.
Living, it's coming.
But there were a lot of people out there who really didn't like themselves until a certain event or certain thing or an epiphany happened in their life. And for us and for me is when I realized that God loved me.
Oh, yes.
That was enough for me. I was like, hold up. So if that's good enough for him,
yes, then
that means it's good enough for everybody.
Everybody. And if I'm enough for him, nobody else need apply.
Now, that doesn't necessarily mean your personality quirks and things that you're going to get along with everyone, but that means you do not have to live up to someone else's standard or what someone else thinks, or why those things maybe they held you in bondage before when it comes to being enough and hoping you impress somebody or got acceptance from someone. Those are the types of things that will hold you in bondage for a long time and really start making you question your true identity.
And it goes back to a third part of building a strong identity is reading the scriptures. Because I remember when we first got saved, we had scriptures written everywhere, the affirmations, because I had to get the old tape out in my head that kept telling me I was nothing, I was dumb, I was stupid, I was fat. I had to put in new information. And so I made the decision. And so like you asked, when did I figure that out? I was probably in my 20s and you gave me a series that says Healing the Brokenhearted. Mm-hmm. And it showed me myself. It's like basically it made me stand in front of a mirror and see myself through my experiences and also see myself through God's word. And I had to make a decision. Which version of me do I want to roll with? Right. I want to roll with the version of me that's going to grow and get better and serve others. And so when you have a strong sense of your identity, you love people. You don't care what they think, but you want to serve the mission and purpose that God has for you. And so I think it's that gentle sense of prioritizing what because God said he loved the world so much he gave.
Right.
it doesn't mean that, everything was all right or all together. He gave knowing that some of us are not going to accept him.
Sure.
And so we have to be willing to give selflessly. We have to be willing to serve selflessly. We have to be willing to live our lives in a way that at the end of the day, as Pastor Lane would say, when I'm gone, I want to leave it all here and know that it made a difference and left a legacy.
Right. So as we come to the end of this episode, which is actually goes really, really quick, y'all. It does. When we start talking, you start thinking about things. We just kind of give you a quick little recap, because when we're talking about identity, you have to remember that your appetites are the things that kind of drive and start your identity struggle. The absence of the relationship with God or your higher power. If you're not a Christian, but you have a different belief system, that's okay. We just want to let you know that it has to be something outside of yourself. The source of your identity is where the foundation really, really starts.
It sure does.
And then your lack of purpose and mission is the element of where your identity really, really, really comes in.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have that, I can see how you can struggle. So you have to really start thinking about those things.
Because God created us to do something, to make a difference. And so sometimes you're struggling because you're not doing anything with what God gave you. So step out, take steps, walk in your purpose.
Because remember, we're stronger together.
Let's grow.
Thank you for listening. Thank you for your investment in time. Remember to subscribe to the show and hit the notification icon to be notified when new episodes are posted on the podcast platform that you're listening from.
Or you can always find us on our website at richrelationshipsus.com or our YouTube channel, Rich Relationships with Gil and Yvette. If you found this podcast helpful or you think it could help someone that you know and care about, please pass it along and share it with them.
And also, you can always send your questions and comments to richrelationships.us@gmail.com. This is a weekly podcast, and the new episodes are going to be posted on Monday by 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. Remember, we're stronger together.
Let's grow.